I spent 6 years in prison for a crime my brother committed. But then I came home and found my wife pregnant with his child. I still remember the smell of burnt rubber, the flashing red and blue lights bouncing off the rain-slick asphalt, and the silence that followed my brother's voice saying, "Please, help me. I'll never survive in prison." I was 27 when it happened. Married. Stable job. A quiet life in the suburbs with my wife, Elena. We were planning to have a baby. I was the older brother, always had been the protector. Lucas was 5 years younger, reckless, charming, and constantly teetering on the edge of disaster. But I loved him. I raised him practically. After our dad walked out and our mom drowned herself in vodka, it was me who packed his lunch, helped with homework, taught him how to shave. Every time he got into trouble, broken windows, stolen bikes, a drug arrest that vanished thanks to a lawyer I paid for, I showed up, cleaned up, and kept him out of the system. So when he called me that night, voice shaking, breathing heavy, saying, "I hit someone. I didn't mean to, they ran out. I didn't see them. I didn't hesitate." I told him to drive home. I took his car, wiped it down, got behind the wheel, and turned myself in. It was second-degree manslaughter. The pedestrian died on impact. A 14-year-old boy coming home from his cousin's birthday party. I still see his face in the papers sometimes. His family never forgave me, not that I blamed them. They shouldn't. I pled guilty. Took 6 years in a medium security facility. 6 years of losing birthdays, anniversaries, and late-night conversations with Elena. 6 years of waking up in a cage while my younger brother lived a life I handed him on a silver platter. But I told myself I was doing the right thing. Lucas promised me he'd visit every month. He came 3 times in the first year. After that, it was just Elena. She never missed a visit. Not once. Not even when I told her she should move on. "I'm not going anywhere," she said once, her fingers tracing mine through the glass partition. "You didn't do this. You're the best man I know. I'm proud of you." Those words were the only thing that kept me sane. That, and the letters she wrote me every week, tucked with pressed flowers or pictures from the world outside, our dog on the porch, a photo of the first garden she planted without me. Sometimes, even a recipe she tried for the first time, written with little notes like "burnt it the first go, you'd have laughed so hard." I loved her more every single day I was locked away. But Lucas, he faded. No calls. No letters. Not even messages passed through Elena. I told myself he was overwhelmed. Guilty. That he didn't know how to face me. That maybe he was trying to forget what he'd done by drowning in distractions. Still, there was a part of me that wanted more than silence. I gave up my life for him, and he gave me nothing in return. My lawyer tried to appeal after 3 years. New evidence, technical loopholes, nothing worked. I served the full 6. Day for day. I watched friends get out, watched men crumble, watched others lose themselves. But I stayed focused. Clean. Waited. Waited for Elena. Waited for the moment I'd walk out those gates, see her waiting in the same sunflower yellow dress she wore on our wedding day, run to her, lift her off the ground, and feel like a man again. But that's not how it happened. The day I was released was gray. Drizzling. I walked out with a trash bag of my belongings, a state-issued bus voucher, and a racing heart. Elena wasn't there. My first thought was panic. Accident. Traffic. Maybe she forgot the time. Maybe Lucas was picking me up instead. Or maybe something worse happened. I called. No answer. Called again. Nothing. Then I called a cab and gave my home address. As we pulled up the street, my chest tightened. The house looked different. The hedges I used to trim every Sunday were wild. There were toys on the front porch. A plastic tricycle. The kind with cartoon eyes and a worn sticker that read "Speedy Racer." Kids in the neighborhood must leave their stuff here, I thought, right? I stepped out of the cab, heart hammering. No one knew I was coming today. That was the plan. I wanted it to be a surprise. I walked up the driveway. The garage door was open, revealing a car I didn't recognize. A sleek black SUV, not Elena's old hatchback. Expensive. Brand new. Then I heard laughter. Two voices. One deep, one soft. Coming from inside. I opened the front door, unlocked, like it always was, and stepped in. I expected shock, joy, screams of happiness, maybe tears. But what I saw stopped me cold. There, sitting on the couch, was Lucas, shirtless, holding a wine glass. And next to him, curled against his side like they'd never known another life, was my wife. Pregnant. Heavily pregnant. 8 months, maybe more. She stood when she saw me, face turning pale, a hand instinctively covering her belly. Her lips moved, but no words came out. Lucas didn't even flinch. He smirked, sipped his drink, and said the words I will never forget for the rest of my life. Well, look who finally got out. I stood there, rain soaking the back of my shirt through the open door, and felt the walls of my world crack inwards. Every second I spent in prison had been built on one belief, that I was sacrificing for something worth saving. But in that moment, as Lucas leaned back like a king on my couch and Elena stood in my home with his child inside her, I realized I'd been living in a fantasy built on lies and manipulation. Say something, Elena finally whispered. I blinked. What is this? My voice came out hoarse, fragile, like it didn't belong to me anymore. Lucas stretched, draped his arm over the back of the couch, and let out a lazy chuckle. Don't make it a big deal, man. It just happened. It just happened? My eyes locked on him. You're sleeping with my wife. You got my wife pregnant. She wasn't really your wife anymore, he said, voice slick like oil. You gave her up the day you turned yourself in. You gave everything up. I gave up my freedom. For you. Yeah, he said, with no shame. And I'll always be grateful. But 6 years is a long time. She was lonely. And well, I was here. Elena tried to speak, but I held up a hand. Don't. Not yet. Just don't. I walked into the living room slowly, like I was approaching the scene of a crime. My home was unrecognizable. The photos on the walls had changed. My wedding picture was gone. In its place was a framed photo of Lucas and Elena, smiling on a beach I'd never seen. There were baby books stacked on the coffee table, a knitted blanket, a baby monitor on the end table, blinking. I sat down, not because I wanted to, but because my knees gave out. The weight of it all, the years, the silence, the betrayal, it crushed me from the inside. How long? I asked. Elena looked down, fingers trembling over her belly. Lucas answered for her. About 2 years in. 2 years in. So while I was still adjusting to prison life, still getting jumped in the showers, still dreaming of my wife's voice to keep me sane, they were already in bed together. I looked at her then. Really looked. The woman I had loved more than anyone. The woman I wrote letters to, cried for, prayed for. What happened to all those things you said? I asked quietly. That you'd wait. That you were proud of me. That you still loved me. Tears rolled down her cheeks. I did. I do. But I was broken, and Lucas, he was here. He was the only person who reminded me of you. Reminded you of me? I laughed bitterly. He's nothing like me. I went to prison so he could be free. I gave up everything so you wouldn't lose both of us. And you thanked me by giving him the one thing I was holding on to. Elena took a step forward, crying harder now. I was weak. I'm sorry. I never meant to fall in love with him. Lucas muttered. You weren't so sorry when you were screaming my name last night. I was on him before I knew what I was doing. Years of rage boiled over and exploded. My fist collided with his jaw, sending the wine glass flying. He fell back, grabbed my shirt, and we crashed into the coffee table. The wood splintered beneath us. Elena screamed. I don't even remember how long we fought, just the sounds of breaking glass, fists hitting flesh, grunts and snarls like animals. Years of pent-up betrayal made flesh. He got in a good hit, split my eyebrow open, But I didn't stop. Couldn't. Not until I saw blood on his lip and fear in his eyes. Get off him! Elena yelled, pulling at me. Stop. I backed away, panting, hands trembling. My face was wet with blood and tears. Lucas spat on the floor. Real mature. No wonder you did so well in prison. I stared at him, heart pounding. You used me. He stood slowly, wincing. No, I replaced you. You were always the good one. The golden child. The one who saved me. But you never saw what that did to me. Always living in your shadow. I shook my head. I never asked to be anything. I just tried to protect you. He smiled, cold, mocking. And now look at you. 6 years wasted. And I have your wife, your house, and soon, your son. Elena's breath hitched. Lucas, don't. But it was too late. My chest constricted. You're what? Lucas raised his brows smug. Yeah, it's a boy. Due in 3 weeks. I couldn't breathe. Couldn't see straight. It was like the world tilted sideways. A boy. I had always dreamed of having a son. Teaching him to ride a bike. Tucking him in. Now he'd be calling my brother Dad. Living in my house. Sleeping in the nursery that I had helped paint 6 years ago, before everything shattered. I need you to leave, I said to Lucas, voice low and shaking. He smirked. Sorry, bro. This is our house now. You signed everything over before you went in, remember? I had. I did it thinking it would protect Elena. Keep the house out of state hands. Lucas offered to hold the deed temporarily. I never thought twice about it. But you can stay in the guest room for a bit, Lucas added with a wink. Till you get back on your feet. My hands curled into fists. Elena stepped between us. Please, just go cool off. Let's talk tomorrow. This is too much at once. I didn't answer. I just walked out. The rain had stopped. The streetlights buzzed in the silence. I stood there, soaked, humiliated, hollow. Everything I believed in, family, love, loyalty, had been burned down in one night. And the ones holding the matchsticks were the two people I trusted most. I wandered for hours. Ended up at an old friend's place, someone I used to work construction with. He let me crash on his couch, no questions asked. Just handed me a towel and a beer and said, You look like you've seen hell. I think I just came from it, I replied. That night, lying on a stranger's couch with dried blood on my shirt, I made a decision. Revenge wasn't a word I used before. I used to believe in grace. Forgiveness. I believed in protecting the people I loved, no matter the cost. But that man, the one who believed in love and sacrifice, he died in a cell 6 years ago. The one who walked out of prison? He was reborn in betrayal. And now, he wanted blood. They say grief has stages. Denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. But what they never talk about, what they never prepare you for, is what happens after acceptance. That cold space where emotion dies and something sharper takes its place. Where logic becomes a weapon, and revenge stops being just a fantasy and starts becoming the plan. That's where I was now. The day after I left that house, my house, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't even touch my bruised face in the mirror. I just sat in that old friend's guest room, staring at the ceiling, listening to the slow hum of a fan, and thinking. 6 years. I gave up 6 years for Lucas. And now he was raising my future, the family I was supposed to have, while smiling at me like he'd won. But I knew him better than anyone. Lucas never won anything. He just took until someone stopped him. And this time, I wasn't going to be the one who folded. I had nothing left to lose. No job, my old company had replaced me after the first year. No money, I'd signed everything over to Lucas, thinking it would keep it in the family. No reputation, ex-con, accused of killing a teenager, media scapegoat. But I had something more dangerous than all of that. I had time. I had clarity. And I had a debt to collect. Over the next few weeks, I started rebuilding, quietly, methodically. like an architect designing the structure of a storm. I started with documents. At a legal aid center downtown, I sat for 6 hours, pulling every property record, signature, and transfer form related to the house. Lucas forged 2 of my signatures. Poorly. Sloppy. Probably thinking no one would ever check. But the timestamps, the dates, they told me the real story. He signed the property over to himself a full year before Elena stopped visiting me in prison. That wasn't a mistake. That was premeditated. Next, I began digging into their finances. They'd opened a shared account. Lucas had emptied the trust fund my mother left for me, the one I told him to hold in case of emergencies. They were living off it like parasites. Trips, designer baby items, a $6,000 stroller. I found all of this from a public computer in the library, using old passwords I'd never changed and backdoor access I'd set up long ago for emergencies. It was like watching a slow-motion train crash that everyone else called a honeymoon. But the most important thing I discovered wasn't in the documents. It was in the silence. Elena hadn't told anyone about me. Mutual friends thought I had died in prison. Her family assumed we'd divorced. The baby shower they held? She told them Lucas was her longtime boyfriend. She erased me. Lucas, the snake, hadn't just taken over my life, he'd rewritten it. And she let him. And somehow, that was worse than anything else. She could have said he's in prison for protecting his brother. She could have told them the truth. But no, she let me rot in the dark while pretending I never existed. I started watching them. I'd walk the street at night, hoodie up, watching my own house from the shadows. The bedroom light turned off at 10 p.m. sharp. Lucas slept on the left side of the bed. Elena took nightly walks to the end of the driveway with her hand on her belly, rubbing circles. They were living the life I died for. And that life was about to crack. One afternoon, I went to the garage where I used to keep my tools, a place Lucas hadn't touched. The lock was still broken. I slipped in, found my old stash, screwdrivers, hammer, some old keys, and my journal. Inside the journal was a list of passwords I used to use, and next to that, a USB I'd taped under the spine. That USB had every file from Lucas's old laptop I had backed up before I went inside, including photos, videos, private messages. He never knew I was the one who fixed his laptop after he spilled wine on it. Never knew I cloned his drive. The messages I found made my stomach twist. Months before the hit and run, he had texted someone. If anything happens to me, my brother will take the fall. He always does. And after I was sentenced, this gem. Finally, out of my way. But that wasn't even the worst part. There were messages between him and Elena. Lucas, he'll be gone a long time. You need someone. Someone who actually knows how to touch you. Elena, I feel guilty, but I don't want to be alone anymore. Lucas, then stop pretending you're still his wife. So that was it. It wasn't grief. It wasn't loneliness. It was convenience, desire, and selfishness. They weren't victims of circumstance. They were co-conspirators in my erasure. I printed those messages. All of them. Hundreds of pages. Bound them into a cheap black folder. Titled it, The Truth. But I wasn't going to send it. Not yet. First, I needed leverage. I made an appointment at a local paternity clinic. Used an alias. Told them I needed a discreet test done, prenatal. They said I'd need a cheek swab from the father and the mother. I already had Elena's, from an old toothbrush I'd kept when I moved out. As for Lucas, I waited until he went for his gym session, every Thursday, like clockwork. Slipped into their trash bin out back and grabbed a water bottle he always left behind. The results came 2 weeks later. 99.999% match. Lucas is the father. I stared at the paper, fingers shaking. It didn't surprise me, but it solidified something inside me. This isn't about pain anymore. It's about power and taking back everything they stole. The final move came in stages. I filed for a civil lawsuit, property fraud and financial exploitation. The forged signatures alone were enough to start an investigation. And thanks to my lawyer, a sharp, bitter woman named Grace who hated cheats, we pushed it hard. Lucas was served the papers during brunch at a local cafe. I was there across the street, watching as the smile drained from his face. Elena's panic started the next day. She called me. For the first time in months. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. I let the silence stretch until it ached. Then I said, "Because you thought I was stupid. And now, I want you both to know what smart looks like." "Please," she whispered. "The baby isn't mine, and I owe him nothing." She cried, begged, said she never meant to hurt me. And that's when I told her the part that broke her. "You remember all those letters I wrote you in prison?" "Yes," she said, hesitant. "I kept every one of your replies. The ones where you said you loved me. Where you said you'd wait. I made copies. Sent them to your parents. Your friends. Every single one who came to your baby's shower." The silence was nuclear. Then I said, "Enjoy your perfect little life while it lasts." And I hung up. Lucas started calling 2 days later. Voicemail after voicemail. But I didn't pick up. Because I wasn't finished yet. I wasn't even close. Revenge isn't loud. It doesn't announce itself with fireworks or screaming matches. Real revenge is quiet, surgical. It slides under your skin, ruins your blood, and leaves you bleeding from the inside out while you smile at the world. That's what I wanted for Lucas and Elena. Not some loud explosion. I wanted them to rot. The civil lawsuit was just the start. By the time Lucas realized how deep the knife went, he was already bleeding money. Grace, my lawyer, filed a formal complaint with the state attorney's office over the forged documents. While it wasn't enough for a criminal conviction, it opened the door to an audit, and that uncovered far more. Turns out Lucas had been committing tax fraud for the past 4 years, claiming multiple deductions under fake business names to fund his lifestyle. The house, the new SUV, the baby shower, all of it under the guise of business development expenses for a startup that never existed. And the best part? He put Elena's name on half the paperwork. Joint fraud. They were both liable. Their bank accounts were frozen within days. The IRS began its crawl through every transaction they ever made. And when you've lived for years on stolen money, that's not something you survive. Meanwhile, I made my next move. One of the things I'd done in prison, aside from plan my brother's downfall, was learn coding. There was a program run by volunteers that taught inmates basic programming skills. I'd buried myself in that world to stay sane, and I got good. I used those skills to build a simple little website, lyinglucas.com. It contained screenshots of his texts admitting to letting me take the fall, messages between him and Elena, the paternity test results, a photo of me and Elena at our wedding beside a photo of Lucas and Elena on the same couch 6 years later. At the bottom was a single caption: "Some betrayals don't deserve silence." I didn't need it to go viral. I just needed the right people to see it. And they did. The page got shared among old coworkers, neighbors, family members. It made its way to Elena's parents, the ones who once called me a son. Her father left a comment under one of the images. "You disgust me. Don't ever come to our house again." Lucas's employer, a marketing firm he barely did any work for, quietly let him go. No scandal. Just a budget cut that stripped him of his 6-figure paycheck and benefits. Then came the eviction notice. The property I once called home was still under investigation for fraudulent transfer. So the state placed a lien on it. Elena, now 8 months pregnant, had nowhere to go. I didn't take pleasure in her tears. But I didn't stop them either. She called me again. This time from a motel. Her voice was shaky. "You've made your point." I stayed silent. She exhaled shakily. "You've destroyed everything. Lucas has no job. We're being audited. I'm due in 3 weeks and we don't even have a crib." "Good," I said. Maybe now you'll understand what it feels like to lose everything. You loved me once, she whispered. I died loving you, I replied. And all you did was bury me deeper. Lucas wasn't taking it as quietly. He cornered me outside the grocery store one afternoon, all rage and desperation. Gone was the smooth, smug brother who used to rule every room. He looked unshaven, pale, twitchy. You sick bastard, he spat. You think you're better than me? You think this makes us even? I turned to him calmly. You still don't get it, do you? This isn't about being even. This is about balance. You tilted the world one way for 6 years. I'm just setting it back. You ruined my life. You stole mine. He lunged at me. Got one punch in. I didn't fight back. Because I didn't need to. 2 security guards pinned him within seconds. He was arrested for assault. I didn't press charges. I didn't have to. The arrest record alone got back to the courts handling our civil case. More weight. More fire. More pressure. The next blow came silently, like all the others. I sent a manila envelope to every news outlet in the city. Inside was a full written statement of what happened, from the hit and run to the pregnancy, with evidence attached. Most ignored it. But one small independent journalist picked it up. They ran the headline. He went to prison for his brother. Now that brother is raising his child. The article didn't name Elena, just Lucas. But it exploded online. People tore him apart in the comments. Backstabber. Sociopath. Brother of the year. He stopped showing his face in public after that. And still. I wasn't done. One night, I drove by their motel. The parking lot was empty except for one old minivan and a flickering neon sign reading, "No vacancy." Through the window, I saw Elena curled up on the bed, Lucas pacing in the corner, yelling into his phone. Their world was cracked beyond repair. But mine? I was just starting to rebuild. I had moved in with Grace temporarily. Strictly platonic, she had a fiance overseas, but she offered her spare room without hesitation. You're not crazy, she said once. You're just the first person I've seen who actually made revenge look like justice. Maybe. Maybe not. But it wasn't about justice anymore. It was about identity. They tried to erase me. Replace me. Now the world knew who I was again. And who they were. The final move came in a box. I had the contents of our old home delivered to the motel. Everything that belonged to me. My clothes, my tools, my journals, my wedding photo. All dumped in front of their door in a taped-up cardboard coffin. With it was a note. 4 words. Handwritten. I forgave you both. It was a lie. But lies were how this started. Poetic, really. Forgiveness. It's the word people say when they want to stop the bleeding. When they're tired of the war. But forgiveness is not the same as peace. And in my case, it was a smokescreen, the last, necessary deception to make sure they never saw what was coming next. 3 weeks after I delivered the box to their motel room, the baby was born. A boy. They named him Isaac. Not after anyone. Not family. Just a name. Probably one from a list they found online. Lucas tried to send me a message. A photo of the baby, along with a single line. He deserves to know who you are. I deleted it. The truth was, Isaac wasn't mine. Not by blood. Not by name. Not by anything that mattered anymore. He was his father's son. And that should have been the end of it. But it wasn't. Because 3 days later, I received a letter. Not an email. Not a call. An actual handwritten letter, slid under Grace's door in the middle of the night. The handwriting stopped me cold. It was Elena's. I opened it carefully. The ink was smudged like she'd cried while writing it. The first few lines were shaky, apologetic, repeating things I'd heard 100 times. But then, something changed. She wrote, "There's something I never told you. Not because I wanted to protect myself, but because I was afraid of what it would do to you. But I can't live with this secret anymore." I leaned forward, breath caught in my throat. She continued. The night Lucas hit that boy, I was in the passenger seat. We were fighting. He was drunk. I told him to slow down. And when the boy ran out, I screamed, but it was too late. He panicked, pulled over, and before I could even move, he was already calling you. He told me, my brother will cover this. He owes me. I begged him to tell the truth, but he said if I didn't help him, he'd tell everyone I was driving. He said I'd go to jail too, that the police would never believe I wasn't holding the wheel, that I'd lose everything. I was terrified, so I stayed quiet. But you went to prison for both of us. The letter trembled in my hands. I had always thought I was covering for him, but I was covering for them both. Elena ended the letter with, I deserve whatever happens next. But Isaac doesn't. Please don't punish him for our sins. I still see the man I loved in your eyes. Even if you hate me now. I sat there for hours. Not moving. Not breathing. I replayed every visit. Every letter. Every look she gave me behind that prison glass. And now, it all made sense. The hesitation. The guilt. The sudden shift 2 years in. She wasn't just grieving me. She was drowning in the weight of what she'd done. I didn't sleep that night. Didn't move from the chair until the sun rose. Because the truth was, I didn't know what to feel anymore. Rage? Betrayal? Closure? Or all of it? The next day, I went to the motel. No warning. Just walked to the front desk and asked for their room. When I knocked, it was Lucas who opened the door. He froze. Elena's not here, he said quickly. She went to the store. I'm not here for her, I said. He tried to shut the door. I stopped it with one hand and walked in. The baby was in a small bassinet, sleeping, peaceful. I looked at Lucas. Why didn't you tell the truth back then? I asked. He smirked, but it was hollow now, like a mask that no longer fit. Because you were always the hero, and I was tired of being the screw-up. So you let me take the fall. You offered. I just didn't stop you. But you knew Elena was in the car. He looked away. Silence. That was enough. You could have saved me, I said. One word. One confession. And I could have walked free. Lucas shrugged. And then what? You'd have come home to her anyway. You always won. No, I said quietly. I lost everything, and now. So will you. He laughed bitterly. You already took everything. The money, the job, the house. What else is there to take? I walked over to the table, pulled out a manila envelope, dropped it in front of him. He stared at it. What's this? Custody papers, I said. He blinked. You want to take my son? No, I said. I want to give him away. His confusion deepened. Elena signed over parental consent this morning, I continued. She wants him raised far away from this. Far away from you. She's leaving the state. Lucas laughed like it was a joke. Then opened the envelope. Inside was a full custody request. From Elena's parents. Lucas's face went pale. They filed a petition yesterday. With your arrest, your fraud case, and your unstable housing, they'll win. You son of a... I leaned in, inches from his face. I could have burned you down, Lucas. I could have made sure you never saw daylight again. But instead, I'm leaving you with nothing. Not even your own son. You can't do this. I already did. He lunged at me, again, but stopped himself. There was nothing left to fight with. Just the hollow shell of a man who thought he'd won a game that was never his to play. I walked out. Didn't look back. 3 months later, I visited Elena one final time. She was staying at her parents' place now in a quiet coastal town. Isaac was safe, healthy, growing. We sat on the porch. She didn't say much. Just handed me a cup of tea and stared at the ocean. After a long silence, she said, He doesn't know what he lost. I know, I replied. She looked at me. And you? Do you know what you lost? I thought about it. Then I said, yeah, I lost who I was. And now? I finished my tea, set it down gently. I'm starting to figure out who I want to become. She nodded. No apologies. No promises. Just two broken people in the wake of something they couldn't fix. As I left, she said softly, you were right. Revenge isn't loud. I turned back one last time. It's not, I said, but it echoes. And then I walked away. Free, for the first time in years. Not just from prison, but from all of them.